In this video, we're going to look at pivot tables. Pivot tables are a very quick way of summarising your data. In other videos, I've talked about SUMIF and COUNTIF worksheet functions, and we have an example of those on this example sales sheet. Cell H5 contains the word north, I5 is the count of the entries with the word north in them, and J5 is the sum of the sales, J4 is the sum of the sales. This is fine for a small amount of data, but if we know that we've got only North, South and Midlands regions, we'd probably just enter those in. In fact, this data has errors in it because somebody has decided there's an East region which Mr. E works for. Mr. E works for the South, not for the North East region. Using a pivot table could be one way of picking up that error. Regardless of whether or not you have to pick up errors, it is a very quick way of summarising data. So let's create a pivot table. What I'm going to do is select all of the cells from the top down to row 43. I want to select all of those before I start creating the pivot table, because had I just left the cursor in cell A1 and started creating the pivot table, Excel would have assumed that the data continues to line 44, where I've got a summary of the data above. So I want to create a pivot table which is on the Insert ribbon. I'm going to say Insert Pivot Table. Excel will ask me where the table or range is. And as I've already selected it, Excel is going to give me that as an option. It's exactly right, so I'm going to keep that, but I could type that in if I needed to, or indeed use this area here to get to the worksheet and select it at that point. The next question in this version of Excel, which is Excel 2010, is asking me where I would like to store the pivot table report. Do I want it on a new worksheet? In this instance I do. Or would I perhaps like it on an existing worksheet? Maybe I want to put it in cell L1 of this worksheet. I think that's going to be messy, and it's certainly going to be more difficult for you to see what I'm doing, so I'm going to put it on a nice new worksheet. So I'll click OK, and Excel creates an outline of the pivot table for me just there. And on the right hand side, I have a new ribbon for the pivot table tools. And I can drop into it the column fields, the row fields and the value fields. So I'm going to summarise my data by region, and we'll summarise it by salesman as well. We'll get a sum of the sales amount. I've dragged those directly into the pivot table, but I could have dragged them down to this area as well. Works just fine. Whichever you do, it's gone into that area. Now, as you can see here, Mr. E is appearing in two regions. It's very easy to see. It was fairly easy to see on the sales data because we only had just over 40 lines of data. But if we had a few thousand lines, or tens of thousands of lines, it would have been a lot more difficult to spot that error. Here we can see Mr. E should only be in one region, as in two. Something's wrong. But we've got a nice straightforward summary. We've got by salesman, by region, there's the grand total for the region, there's the grand total for each salesman, which for everybody apart from Mr. E, of course, is exactly the same as the amount they sold in their region. Here's the overall grand total. If you wanted to see the names of the sales manager, well, drop that in as a row label. Now that's showing us this NA value, which we had from the VLOOKUP video that you may already have seen. This is a very quick summary of the pivot table. There's a lot you can do with pivot tables. You could, for instance, drop in the date and specify that you wanted only certain dates. let's say if you wanted to exclude January 2012, doing that would be able to exclude that. Normally, if I was doing a pivot table with dates, I would use a function on the actual data to convert the day, month, year format into a month, year. It's usual that you'd want to summarise for January of one year, February of the same year, etc. That's outside the scope of this video. If you want to know how to do something like that, just contact me and I'll talk you through it. We've decided that sales data is actually pointless, so we can just drag that back to the field list. The same way, we don't actually need to know about the sales manager, so we'll drag that across there. Excel has assumed by default that we want to do a sum of the sales amount. But if I right click that and choose value field settings, I can change it to a count or an average or a max or a min. So let's do a count, which gives us the number of sales that each salesman has made in the region, which, as this data was generated fairly quickly, is remarkably static across the piece. We've got either 5 or 4 sales, but obviously if you're doing this for real, you get much more sensible numbers coming out. As I say, this is a very quick overview of using pivot tables. More than happy to talk through by phone or email anything you want to know. Just contact me if you do. Hope you've enjoyed watching the video. Maybe you want to watch some of the other ones. Thanks.